Hey, I'm knee-deep in water and some delicious food, all coming up next. I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to Garden to Table. Just look at this gorgeous golden field. This is rice. Now today's show is really focused around water and certain things that we love to eat that require a lot of water, and rice is just one of the examples we're going to cover in today's show. Also in today's show, we'll learn all there is to know about milling rice from my friends at the Indian Bayou Milling Company. Then one of my favorite chefs, Regina Charboneau, is put to the test to create a fantastic dish using this versatile grain. And later on, I'll show you how to make a yummy cranberry chutney that you'll definitely want to try. So as you can see, we've got a lot to cover in today's show, so why don't we get started? This is one of the most important cereal grains in the world. It's rice. And you can't grow a field of rice like this without a lot of water. You see, rice was first planted in America in the 1690s. It came into South Carolina from Madagascar. Thomas Jefferson in the 1780s and 90s was a great proponent of rice culture in America. Now, Jefferson never grew rice as a crop at his home Monticello in Virginia, but he certainly supported the production of rice in other southern states. Now today, there's a lot of rice being produced in this country, mainly by 6 different states. At the top is Arkansas. Arkansas produces more rice than any other state in the country. In fact, I'm standing in a field in Prairie County, Arkansas. In the state of Arkansas, they produce over 1.3 million acres of rice. Now, what's interesting about this field is it's just about to be harvested. The water's been drained from the field, and soon the combines will come through and harvest this golden grain. During the winter months, rice farmers capture rainwater in the rice fields, and this creates vital resting and foraging habitat for migratory and wintering waterfowl. Winter flooding of the rice fields also helps prevent erosion and control weeds, and also protect soil nutrients. What's interesting about rice is that it's gluten-free and it's the least allergenic of the cereal grains that we produce. It's a grain that is enjoyed internationally in so many delicious ways.
This whole endeavor actually began about 35 years ago whenever Mark and I married, and we began rice farming together as a husband and wife team. And we had a son named Brandon, and he decided he wanted to go into farming. We've grown rice, soybeans, wheat, milo, and corn. And we planted 500 acres of rice in 2010. And of course, it does help for all these minerals on the edge of the delta in the soil.
This is where we bring it in to dry it right out of the field. Then we can store it in here too until we get ready to use it. Typically when we bring it out of the field, the moisture is anywhere from 16 to 18%.
And we dry it until it comes down to a percentage of about 13, maybe 11%, because we don't want it to break on us. Once that's done, we're ready for milling.
We bring it up here to the cleaners, and this is called a clipper cleaner. It's built back in the 40s. It's got 2 screens in it. It takes the bigger stuff out the top screen, and the smaller stuff falls through the bottom screen and sifts the chaff out and the sticks and the debris. And the clean rice goes out the back in that little bitty elevator. We catch it back there, and then the light stuff blows out the front. That's considered a real small machine, and it will do about 1,000 pounds an hour. Take it away from the seed cleaner, put it in a homemade hopper that we built. While we're running the mill, the husk comes out in the side over here in the bag. Clean rice comes out in a bucket over here. Once we've got it milled, we got the product ready, we bring it over here to a machine it was built back in the 50s, and it measures it, stand here and hold a bag under it, and it dispenses it. We set it over here and label on it and sew it up.
So once we get it bagged, and we just hand it over to the people, and they give us our money, and they go home and they bake our rice, because that's how we recommend doing it. Baking it in an oven for an hour, 375 degrees, remove, rest, fluff, and enjoy.
Just look at these beautiful grains. This is millet. What a gorgeous golden color. Rolled oats, buckwheat, and barley. Now when cooking grains, it's important to know some basic terminology for the methods that you might cook them, such as simmer, steep, and cereal. For instance, when a recipe calls to simmer, it's telling you to bring a liquid to a boil and then to stir in the grain. After that, you want to cover and reduce the heat to low, cooking until the liquid is absorbed and the grain is tender to the bite. This is often used with barley. Now let's take the phrase to steep. This means to pour a boiling liquid over the grain. Then you just cover it and let it stand until the grain is tender over no heat. This is the way you might cook buckwheat. Now when using grains for cereal, you simply want to combine the cold liquid and the grain together in the case of rolled oats. You bring it to a boil, stirring constantly over high heat. Once boiling, you reduce the temperature to low, cover, and cook to the desired thickness. Obviously, every grain needs a certain amount of liquid to cook. How much? Well, it depends on the grain and how much you're actually cooking. Now, I hope these terms and sorting them out will be helpful to you in your cooking endeavors. For today's show, I challenged my good friend, Regina Charboneau, to create a unique rice-inspired dish. I think you'll like what she came up with.
Alan and I have been friends for a long time, and I love when he challenges me to create a new recipe for him when he's working on a special segment. And when he approached me about rice as a side dish, I really thought, I've got to come up with something different this time. So I decided to take the things that go with the earthiness of rice, and I chose to use brown rice. You always start with cooked rice, 6 eggs, and add 1 cup of cream. You're going to mix those well so they're well blended. You'll put that to the side. Then you saute a 1/2 cup of onion with 2 cups of mushrooms. You do that with olive oil or a little butter. You're going to let that cool a little bit. And your rice, you're going to have 2 cups of cooked rice. The good thing about this, you could use day-old rice. So if you have leftover rice, it works perfect for this. So you take 2 cups of rice, blend the rice with the egg mixture, the egg and cream, and you're going to put the mushrooms and onion once they've cooled a bit. Stir that well. And then you take 1 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/2 teaspoon of sage, a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic. I like things as an individual serving like I have here. I just think it's always a nicer presentation. This recipe serves 8, and I take 8 custard cups and I spray them with oil, and then I fill each one with the mixture. Then it goes into a 350-degree oven for about 45 to 55 minutes. You'll be able to tell when you touch the center and it's firm in the center. Then they can be served right in the cup, or if you'd like to do a nicer presentation like I have here, you can actually take it out of the cup. If you have friends that are vegetarian, this would make a great entree just by adding a lot more mushrooms on top. You could saute more mushrooms, maybe a variety of mushrooms. Even though this is a new dish, I have no doubt it's going to be a standard at my dining room table at Twin Oaks.
I don't know about you, but I love cranberries in just about any possible form. I love the juice, and I certainly love this chutney recipe, and the center player is the cranberry. You know, cranberries are an all-American food, and what's interesting about them is they grow in wet bogs and they're harvested in water. Fascinating, really. This recipe is simple. It just requires some fruit of various kinds and spices combined together. What I'm doing here is I'm just finishing up chopping an apple into little coarse pieces. You can see here, I used a large Granny Smith. Any really firm tart apple will work. And I'm ready to start by putting the fruit in this medium-sized saucepan. And I'm going to start with the cranberry, the star of the show. Just look at these, aren't they gorgeous? What a marvelous color. They look like rubies. I have 3½ cups of cranberries that are going to go in here. I have 1/2 cup of golden raisins. I have 1 navel orange that's been segmented. And I took the pith off of it, the white substance that's on the outside of the orange after you peel it. And then I have 1 cup of white onion that has been chopped. And then in goes the apple. Love those Granny Smiths. Just use this. I'm going to mix this together a little bit. Make sure all those fruits are evenly distributed. And then what I'm going to do is take some orange juice, 1 navel orange, so that's half, and here's the other half here. I'm going to squeeze all of that juice into this mixture like this. All right. Now that's all the fruit. It looks pretty, doesn't it? It looks like a fruit salad. Okay, now let's turn to the spices. This is what really gives it a lot of punch. We're going to take 1/4 teaspoon of cloves ground, 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, and 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Mix all that together, and I'm going to cook this on medium heat. And the transformation is really remarkable. It goes from this fruit salad-like concoction to a lovely sauce. And I'm telling you, this chutney is so good on so many things. It's sort of tart and sweet at the same time. It's lovely on turkey or pork tenderloin, and I even like it on sandwiches, turkey sandwiches. All right, now the last ingredient is some brown sugar. You want to take light brown sugar, and I've packed 1 cup of it. And I'm just going to crumble that into it here. And that's a nice antidote to those little cranberries, because as you know, these little guys are really tart. Chutneys are spicy condiments that are served with a meal, and they're originally from India. And this recipe is for one that is, I think, on the sweet side. And if you like something that's a little more tart, you can add 1/4 cup of vinegar, and just apple cider vinegar, and cook it down. Also, you can kind of decide on what level of texture you want. This is still pretty rustic, I would say, in that you can still identify the pieces of fruit. You can cook this down even more and make it a thicker sauce. One of my favorite ways to serve this chutney is to put it on a wheel of warm brie cheese. It will delight your friends. I want to show you a tablescape that doesn't require using any flowers at all. And think about this, when you're finished, you can even eat the centerpiece. What I've done here is I'm floating some fruit in these large votives. You could use a large glass bowl. The idea is make sure that they're clear, and they use 5 of them the same size. You wouldn't even have to use 5, you could even use 3. I just like to use odd numbers. So as you see here, I've used little kumquats, cranberries, kumquats, cranberries, kumquats, cranberries. So you see the pattern, the rhythm across here. And the colors of the cranberries and kumquats are reflected in the placemats, which are cranberry red, and these ochre or golden colored napkins. So you've got that color reflection or echo going on here, which brings harmony to the entire table composition. Of course, the star of the show here is the vase filled with fruit. What you want is fruit that's buoyant in water. And what I did here, in the case of the kumquats, is used about 30 kumquats. I washed them thoroughly first, placed them in here, and then added water up to a desired height. In the case of the cranberries, that's about 3 cups of fresh cranberries. And all you have to do is place a single tea candle in the center, and there's enough support there to keep it suspended at the right height all the way across. Now what you want to do is suspend that little tea candle about an hour before your guests arrive, because what will happen if you leave it in there longer than that is the wick will begin to pull up water from the bottom, moisten the wick, and it'll make it very difficult to light the candles. So it's just a fun idea. It's very simple, easy to do. And remember, you can recycle everything. You can make a delicious recipe, chutney, or some sort of marmalade out of all of these things that are here on the table. Give it a try. You know, you can't talk about farming with water without mentioning fish farms. My good friends at the Keogh Fish Farm ship fish all over the world, both for creating great fish dishes and helping control vegetation.
My name's Mike Freeze, and I'm one of the co-owners of Keogh Fish Farm, and we raise predominantly two species of fish. The sterile triploid grass carp, a very efficient machine at eating aquatic vegetation, and then the hybrid striped bass. Those fish are marketed into fancy white tablecloth restaurants. We're actually the largest hatchery of hybrid striped bass in the world, and we ship these fish to a lot of different states, from California to Florida to Texas, Wisconsin. Triploid grass carp cannot reproduce. Most of your states, they want to be able to use a fish like this, but they want to make sure that if it does escape, it cannot reproduce. We actually take the eggs right after we spawn them and we put them in a pressure chamber. And what this does is it causes that fish to retain that extra chromosome. So they cannot produce any eggs or a normal amount of sperm. Unfortunately, this is not 100%. So say out of 1,000 baby fish, we may have 5 or 10 that are normal and that could reproduce. Okay, this is a vat of grass carp, and we've anesthetized them. Just like if you go to the doctor and they're doing surgery on you, we've put them to sleep. Dustin's taking these fish and he's putting them in this tub, and he's going to take them over to the testing room. And you can see what our two testers are doing is they stick each fish with a needle and take a very small amount of blood and put it in little plastic containers that have a saline solution in them that you put just the tiniest amount of blood. Then they're taken into the culture counter where the operator runs them through the machine. And it's actually an electrical current that you're measuring the difference. Now he's just told them that all the fish in this tray are good, and they're putting them into this trough here, and this water is going to take them out through the wall to a concrete vat where they're going to stay until we get ready to sell them. We'll put about 1,000 fish in each vat. Here's a small air shipment that's going to the state of Hawaii. It's actually going to go to a golf course, and they're going to put them in their golf course ponds so they can keep the aquatic vegetation down and use that water for irrigation.
I'm just rinsing off this beautiful piece of striped bass. Just look at that, isn't it gorgeous? This recipe is really easy to make, and it's very tasty. It's simply a white wine and lemon reduction sauce poured over the striped bass. And all I'm going to do here is just pat it dry after having just rinsed it off. And I'm going to cut this piece of bass into 4 pieces. This is a North American native freshwater fish. That ought to be good enough there. What I'm going to do, there's several steps to this, but it is easy. I'm just going to simply take this fish now, and I'm going to leave the skin on. You can take the skin off if you like, but I'm going to cut it into 4 pieces, roughly equal. And what I'm going to do in this baking dish, I've got the oven preheated at 425. And you're only going to cook this for about 15 to 20 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this white wine and pour it in here. That's a half a cup of just a dry white wine. And then I've taken some leeks. There's about a cup of leeks, and you can see that I've sliced them thinly. There they go, all around the bottom. This is going to make a really nice juice. And then I'm going to just take the fish, and I'm going to place the fish in the dish, place it along in here. Now this is a non-stick dish. If you would like, you can take butter and you can apply to the bottom of the pan, but we're going to add butter anyway. So I'm just taking some butter and just rubbing a little bit on the top of each piece of fish. It's about 2 tablespoons of butter here. I'm just taking it and rubbing it on the fish like this. And this will melt and make that sauce very, very delicious. And I'm going to take just a little bit of lemon juice, pour a little lemon juice all over here, and then salt and pepper to taste. I like a lot of pepper, so I'm going to sprinkle a little pepper here and just a little bit of salt. We'll throw this in the oven now. Now along the way I'm going to baste it. I'm just going to make sure that the pieces of fish aren't touching the edge of the pan there. Get them all nestled in there and cozy together. All right, so I'm going to throw this in the oven. There we go. All right, now while that's going on, I'm going to make this sauce. And the sauce is really quite easy. And just so you know, the juices that come from the baking dish will go into this sauce as the final step. But I want to go ahead and get this started. And what we're going to do is we're going to move these things out of the way. And the ingredients that I'm going to use here in the sauce include just a little bit of water. What I've got here is 1/4 cup of water. Let's just turn it on. We just want this on a medium to low heat because we want this to simmer. I don't really want to bring it to a boil. And then I've got about 4 teaspoons of lemon juice, the juice of about half a lemon with the seeds removed. And then I have 2 coarsely chopped garlic cloves here that are going to go into this. All right, now let me bring these herbs over here. And what I have is 1 tablespoon of 3 different herbs, and we grow a lot of herbs here at the farm, and all of these grow beautifully in containers. So if you don't have a lot of space and don't have a lot of time, you can certainly have a few pots of containers around the kitchen door. What I have here is oregano, fresh oregano. You can see it's just coarsely chopped. Oregano grows like no tomorrow. And then here's some thyme. And this is what makes this fish dish very sort of light and fresh. And then of course some flat leaf Italian parsley. You see I have some there just at the head of the stove. And what I'm going to do is just mix all these things together. All right. Now I like to add a vegetable to this dish. You could stop here, and once the fish is done, you could take that lovely juice with the lemon and butter and wine and pour it in here and then cook it down to whatever you like. And that would be fine. But I also just like to go ahead and take some very thinly sliced zucchini. And once this begins to heat up just a little bit, and you're really getting a nice aroma from it now, it's really lovely. And there's no wine or butter in it. That comes a little later. I'm just going to take the zucchini, and what I have here is about 1.5 cups of thinly sliced zucchini. We're just going to let this cook until the zucchini is tender. I don't want it soft and mushy. I want to have a little tooth to it. I want it a little al dente, and that'll go right on top of the fish. Okay, the zucchini looks about right. It smells really good. And now I think it's time for us to take our fish out of the oven here. Yep, the sauce is bubbling a little bit. Oh heavens, just look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so here, this is what I'm going to do now. I left the skin on the bottom because I think it just holds together really well. I'm just going to gently lift the fish out, and I want to serve in this beautiful dish, this baking dish. And then I'm going to take this juice and add it here to this. Mix this together a little bit. And then I'm just going to take the fish back. And then I just simply take the vegetables and evenly distribute them on top. With a spoon, I think it'd probably be easier to use a spoon here. Just a few pieces. I can decorate the top with the fish like that. There we go. Just a little bit more here. So there's all the veg. All the veg is out and on top. And then you take the rest of this lovely elixir and evenly distribute it over the fish like that. I can cover this with foil, and I can go on about taking care of other things, and it's hot, and it will be ready to serve. Beautiful, easy to prepare, and so delicious, so light, so fresh, and so healthy. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I hope you've enjoyed learning something about food and farms that depend so heavily on water. Until next time, good eating and good health.